Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Mindset. It is fall in Victorville, California, and I guess in the whole Northern Hemisphere for that matter. So here we are once again, and we're going to have, I think, an interesting and a fun and a very thought-provoking episode today. We get to chat with someone whom I never thought I would meet. But I got to meet him on LinkedIn, and then we've met in person, and now we're chatting. And he is a prince, Prince Gharios el Chemor. And Gharios lives in Los Angeles now, and that's an interesting story in of itself. He has written 37 books, more than I've written, I can tell you. And he is involved with a lot of different kinds of activities, and I'm sure that he's going to talk about a lot of those and give us some interesting things to think about. So I'm just going to say, Gharios, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're really glad you're here. Unless you want me to call you Prince. I'm either way.
Oh, thank you so much. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And I always say that the only person I demand to call me Your Highness is my wife. But every time I do, she laughs on my face. So I'm thinking about stopping it.
Yeah, and what does she call you?
She called me Gary. I became Gary.
You
Now I'm
became
Gary.
Gary, huh?
Yeah, because my wife is American. So
Well, but um, do you call her Princess?
no, no.
Oh, okay.
You can call me any way you want. I'm not special.
Yeah.
And as I always like to say, a title in a 21st century from a deposed dynasty is absolutely useless as a personal honor, unless you have like a work like we do. Like my family kept this tradition because we have a humanitarian work with the UN. We can talk more about that later.
Hmm.
But as I always say, princes are not making even street names these days anymore. So I still have to pay for Netflix like everybody else.
Yeah, but I'll bet you think of your wife as a princess, whether you call her that or not, because
Oh, she's a queen. She's not even a
there
princess.
you go. See, now we're talking. Yeah, that's as it should be. Well,
Yeah,
so I let's start with this whole issue of a deposed dynasty and a little bit about maybe your background, where you came from, and all that, and we'll go from there.
sure. Um, well, there's a some people are a little bit um You know, as Voltaire used to say, Napoleon, also Churchill, history is written by the victors. So, especially in the United States, people don't are not very aware of world history. So, is people don't understand how some things work, and even in the Middle East, where my family originated. I'm European from my mother's side, and I have a little like 3% Jewish. I'm British, French, Italian, and from my father's side, I'm Christian Arab from where today is Lebanon.
You're a conglomerate
So
all over the place.
yeah, yeah. So I have all the conflicts, all the colonizers, the people that are colonized, all within an only person. I'm the living UN. So, but even in the Middle East, because since we are like a Christian family, a Christian dynasty, even that history was, political propaganda. So you're not going to promote your enemies. So since the Muslim regimes took over our lands through history, so the story they tell is a very limited history. So, in a lot of history books, people think that our rule ended in the 7th century. So people say, well, how come you are claiming a kingdom that ended 14 centuries ago? And I always say, well, first and foremost, we ruled other realms after that. Even our cousins ruled until 1921. So the like 100 years ago, in what today is Ha'il in Saudi Arabia, it was called Jabal Shmor, which is our last name. So they were our Muslim cousins because some part of the family was forced to convert, and the family that escaped and went where today is Lebanon kept being Christian, which is my direct family. And the Christian branch ruled until 1747, in the 18th century. So it's not like 14 centuries ago. But even if that was the case, according to international law, um, we have a precedent, which is Israel. So Israel revived a state that, you know, they didn't hold sovereignty for over 2,000 years. So our claim, even if we considered the last kingdom, we have a whole kingdom because we ruled principalities after that. We ruled the Byzantine Empire too, but that was very briefly. But we had like principalities or sheikdoms, as we call the very same political unit as you have the UAE, as you have Bahrain, as you have Qatar, Kuwait. So is as sovereign as an empire, but is a small principality.
Mm-hmm.
So that those are the kinds of realms we ruled after we lost the main kingdom in the 7th century. But we ruled, and as I said, my direct family until the 18th century, and my cousins until 1921.
1921.
So yeah, so it's our claim theoretically, if you consider Israel legitimate, you have to consider our claim legitimate. Although we don't actively pursue any kind of political restoration or active, restoration of a territory, kingdom, or anything. On the contrary, we support all the duly established governments, de jure and de facto, because we think that there's a lot of people there wanting power, and we don't want to be another force to try to fight for power or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. On the contrary, we want to help to bring balance. We want to serve. We want to help to bring, a stability and dignity to the people. We're not interested in political movements or topple any governments or anything like that. Although I've been offered many, many times, and thank God I'm not at all seduced by power, because it's something that is an illusion, in my opinion.
So, the family has certainly been spread out. Where were you born?
Well, I was born and raised in Brazil because we have still some family members were able to stay in Lebanon. But there was a huge famine and persecution after my family lost the principality in Zgartazewi, which is in the northern Lebanon. Uh, my great grandfather was assassinated, and then his sons had to flee and like adopt different last names for their children, because it's funny because it could be a great movie, because the Sultan, Ottoman Sultan, was a hunchback, so he's a perfect villain. So the hunchback Sultan wanted to kill all the members of my family. So they were able to hide for some time, but then when the first war, already in the end of the 18th century, 19th century, it was a great, I don't know if I can use the word genocide, but it was a genocide of Christians, because the Druze, they allied with the Ottomans and to destroy the Christians. And so started this movement in the mid 1800s until the culmination of the First World War. And then my family members and many Lebanese, not just my family members, went to Brazil, because Brazil is still the largest Catholic country in the world. So today you have in Brazil twice the number of Lebanese people than you have in Lebanon. You have around 4 million in Lebanon. You have over 8 million Lebanese in Brazil. And I made fun when I first met the Lebanese president. We had the first audience in 2017. We just had a Lebanese descendant president in Brazil. So I said, well, our Lebanese president has like twice the number of Lebanese people than here. So isn't that ironic and funny?
What did he
But
say?
no, he was laughing. He said,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was funny because he was actually his name was Michel Temer. He was from Lebanese descent. And you have today, I think the Minister of Economy in Brazil is Haddad, which is also Lebanese. Yeah, so everyone has an uncle, a cousin. Even in my family, we have a very funny situation because half of the family of my cousins stayed in Lebanon, and the other half went to Brazil. So you had two brothers from the same father that one doesn't speak Arabic or French, and the other doesn't speak Portuguese. So they used to visit each other with their kids and using like cell phones and other things because they were like brothers and couldn't communicate
Hmm.
because one was born and raised in Brazil and the other and still today like my Arabic is a joke and my cousins make fun of me so we talk in English because my Arabic is the Arabic of the 19th century. Um, and again, my grandfather never used the word Lebanon because there was no Lebanon when he left. Lebanon was created in 1946. So I think it's very interesting when a lot of people say about Palestine, oh, there's no Palestine. There was never a state called Palestine. Well, there's never a state called Lebanon, and never a state called Syria, and never a state called Iraq, and never a state, any of the states that we have today in the Middle East, they're all created after the First War.
Yeah.
So they're all creations by the British and the French. And also, a lot of people don't know that.
So, what was it like for you growing up? Because, however you view it, um, you have a very rich family and a rich ancestry. So, what was it like for you growing up?
Well, it was very interesting because um, I I had a Lebanese grandmother and I had an Italian grandmother. So that's why I became fat. Thank God now I'm I lost weight. But yeah, I it was funny because I inherited gout. So I was very sick with gout when I was like 27 years old,
Mm.
and I had to take cortisone. And I always tell this story because I used to go to my Italian grandmother. She would look at me and say, "Oh my God, you're so fat. You're so terribly fat. You have to do something about that. But not today. Now eat." So, so she was like, I should always start a diet the next day that I visited her because when I visited her, I had to eat. So
Hmm.
that's how the dynamic works. But I had a very normal, um, let's say upper middle class, um, um,
Upbringing.
yeah, upbringing. But the thing is, because my father, um, when my grandfather arrived in Brazil with his parents, they had nothing.
Hmm.
They escaped. They had to sell the marble from the palace we had to bribe the Ottoman soldiers, so they were able to escape. So they had they grabbed some jewelry and some. So they started from zero in Brazil. But then my grandfather and many Lebanese families started selling things door to door, and uh, they made a fortune. My grandfather made a huge fortune. Um, he had medication distribution. He represented many laboratories for southern Brazil, and then he had real estate. He became very rich. And my father, when my father was born, my grandfather was already very rich. So he had like a playboy uh, upbringing, different than me. And then my father never worked one day in his life. So when I came, uh, my family said, well, let's not repeat the same mistake that,
Yeah.
we made with him. So let's, ration things with him. So I started working because I wanted, but I started working with 13 years old. And I cannot not work because I have um, uh, we talk about that. I have a cognitive difference than regular people. What people call romantically gifted, which is a very is not as romantic and beautiful as people think. Is like OCD or something like that,
Hmm.
and hypersensibility and stuff. So I cannot not study something. I cannot not work. So is an obsession that I have. So that's why I wrote so many books. I've done so many things. So
What was your
I
job at, what kind of work did you do at 13?
I worked in a video store like Blockbuster, but
Oh,
was like a small one because I watched all the movies. So people love to see me
there you go.
recommending the movies, and
Hmm.
yeah. And so I always work like I was like 15, 16. I was the marketing director of a magazine. So I was always like uh, precautious, let's say. And yeah, so my life was always very normal. I was always blessed. Thank God I never had any um, need. Like I I suffered a lot. I was bullied, and I had a because I was different. So people, they uh, because of the way I talked in school, and I was probably the worst soccer player that have ever lived. And so in Brazil, that's a thing. So I was highly bullied. Um, and but other than that, and of course, because I'm an empath, so um, but I never had any, let's say, need of food or anything like that. Like I always had a very blessed
Hmm.
life
So you went to school in Israel and so on. Did you do college there, or what did you do for college, or did you?
in Brazil. Well, I studied two things in Brazil. I studied in a Franciscan school, the regular school, and then for high school, there is a special course in Brazil, which is the equivalent of the university for theater, like dramatic arts. So I've done that, and then for college, I've done a course that's called marketing and PR. So I have these two trainings, one in dramatic arts and the other one in a corporate PR. Actually, my course even taught propaganda, so we studied a lot of how states work with propaganda and things like that.
Hmm. Two significantly different um, departments of study. How did you combine those, or how did you justify having two different things, art and marketing? That's pretty different.
Well, not to me because I always worked a lot with media. So I'm also a filmmaker and a professional actor, a SAG actor. So I'm SAG here, and I'm in Brazil. It's called SATED, is the SAG equivalent there. Um, I directed a lot of even some commercials and some shows. So to me, that's very they intersect, and and I have this. artistic side of me that is very obsessive too. So I always have to be painting, I always have to be singing and doing something creative because that's who I am. And some people don't understand, but people that actually, I'm not, again, I'm not claiming I have any special talent or anything like that. I think there are people that paint better than me, people that sing better than me, but people that have this, let's say, um, gift, um, they they have a need of putting out their work. It's not, oh, it's cute to paint or it's cute to sing or no. This is the need that you have to manifest this energy that you have inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
So I give you an example. When I had the first flare of gout, was because my first wife said that I could no longer paint because of the smell of the oil paint. So I stopped painting, and then I was like full time. The full free time I had, I was exercising and I was swimming. I was in my the prime healthy body I could ever had. I had that time, and then I start feeling this small pain, and it became a what's the term? I psychologically, I don't remember now the term, but it became a disease because of I could not channel that energy. Psychosomatic.
Psychosomatic. Yeah.
Psychosomatic, exactly. So because I could not channel that energy for painting, then I got the gout.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how long was it before you could go back to painting?
Well, then I discovered that I could. I created a technique that I can make the acrylic paint look as almost as good
Hmm.
as the
As
oil,
oil. Mm-hmm.
and with significant less smell and mess. So I've been painting with acrylic since then.
And what happened to the gout? Did it basically go away?
Well, I got significantly bad, and I had to go and have a bariatric surgery. And because I was taking cortisone like a heroin addict would take
Yeah.
heroin, so because I got in this vicious circle of not being able to exercise, gaining weight, eating, being depressed. So I had almost every 2 weeks I have a very bad flare.
Got it.
So I was like, in the beginning, I would go to the doctor for the injections. Then my grandfather would come and give me the injections. And then I learned myself to give myself the injections. They were so frequent that I had to do it myself. But thank God for the past, let's say, 18 years. I had probably a couple of flares. They're very mild, and
Mm-hmm.
and just with oral medication, I was able to. I'm cortisone free for like 18 years.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, going back to some of the things we talked about earlier,
Mhm.
in terms of you, um, you still identify with the royal house that has not been directly in power, although I would suspect you'd say that you and your family do provide influence. But what does sovereignty mean to you in the 21st century? Basically, when monarchy no longer rules, clearly you have influence and so on. But what does sovereignty mean to you?
Yeah. There's another thing that people don't understand. I'll give you a very very simple example about my family. My family, even though is not officially sovereign anymore, but my family in Lebanon, they still have a palace in a city called Farhata in northern Lebanon. and non-stop we've been serving the community, to the point that when my predecessor, which was Sheikh Antonius el Chemor, was alive, he passed, unfortunately, prematurely. He was 60 years old in 1971, two years before I was born. And he would open the doors of the palace, and people go there and ask money for medication, as you know, to send the kids to school. He would, help the community like a ruler would do. So, because Lebanon, back then was very poor country, and he was
Hmm.
like very, very wealthy. So until today, his sons, my cousins that are part of the council of princes of the royal house of Ghassan, they still do that to the community there. So it's like we never stop, doing the the service. So who wants to watch our documentary, they can Google it. We have it on YouTube. It's called The Royal Legacy and the Christian Kings of the Middle East. You see that, for example, my family provided free water that are still being used by 200,000 people in northern Lebanon for free. So we give uh, free water to 200,000 people, 48 villages in Lebanon. So thanks to my family, also dialysis, blood dialysis is free for all Lebanese citizens, because my cousin bought some machines, and my cousin interact with the president, who was his personal friend back then. So the president made a decree, and today, until today, no one that needs dialysis has to pay. So, but my cousin passed 2 years before I was born, and his oldest son was 15. So he left a lot of businesses for his sons. So they didn't develop the royal house, to the point that in 2008, 37 years later, I was the one that took over. And then I got permission from them also, which is in Arab monarchies, you have something that called baya. So it's like the family agrees who's going to be the next head, the next leader, and
Hmm.
they give the consent, because in Europe is the succession is primogeniture, like the oldest son or daughter
Hmm.
inherits the position. But in the Arab systems, is the best qualified person according to the council of princes, or according to the will of the last head. In my case, they are so busy. I always say I'm the poor cousin, because they are rich. I'm the one that took over this responsibility, and I have the time. So that's how it's done. But sovereignty, as I always say, is a word like peace and democracy that can mean anything and everything.
Hmm.
So, but unfortunately, people don't understand what it means in international law. And today, according to the many conventions, or in the Charter of the United Nations, every single people has the right, called the right of self-determination. Is a cardinal right. Is every single people, and that doesn't depend on anything ever. Is a right that every single people have. So is in the 21st century, is no longer acceptable to have um, colonialism. So all nations and all peoples have this right to self-determination. And I think that's unfortunately, we've been having sometimes that multilateralism and international law are not being very much respected. and we have to make sure that we work together because a lot of people criticize United Nations, and I agree that maybe United Nations has a lot of things to improve, but so as everything else in mankind. So uh, as I always say, when your car has a flat tire, you don't throw away the car, you fix the tire. So I think it's a lot easier for us to fix the system we have than get rid of it and go back to barbarism.
So, um, given given all of that, and given what your relatives are doing in Lebanon and so on, how do governments view your house, and how do they view all of you today? Do they do you think there's opposition? Do they appreciate what you're doing? Because you're not really trying to seek power as such. That probably helps some. But what do governments think of you and all of you?
Yeah, well, some people, the Lebanese government, since the next president, we've been working together with them because they seen the value that we bring. So during the COVID, through our One Voice Foundation, we donated $500,000 of baby formula.
Mm.
It's like 60 tons of baby formula. And recently, amongst other small actions, but recently this year, we fed about 5,000 people for a whole month. We thought it would be 3,000, but Caritas, which is the logistical organization for the Catholic Church, estimated in 5,000. So it was like something around 1,000 families, but for a whole month. So together with SOS World and Giving Hands Germany, we got together, and Caritas, of course, which made the distribution. So they are very like. We just last Saturday we had an intercultural, interreligious event under the patronage of the president, General Joseph Aoun. So we've been working together with the government in Lebanon because the president in Lebanon, people might not know, but the president has to be Christian. The prime minister has to be Sunni Muslim. The speaker of the house must be Shia Muslim because, believe it or not, with all its problems, Lebanon is the only actual democracy in the Middle East because all the 18 religions have the exact same rights according to the constitution.
Mm.
So, but other regimes, for example, I love Jordan, and I lived in Jordan. I had a second residence in Jordan for 2 years, and we tried to implement some educational projects there because I have this I even now have a name now. It's called the Royal Gambit. It's a project to um, uh, prevent the radicalization of teenagers from radical organizations. And there's even a book about it that is out. It's called The Royal Gambit, which is a better and cheaper way to fight terror than actually just try to fight the effects, not the the reasons, the sources of the problem. And so I had some problems because of the fact that I'm Christian, because who King Abdullah in Jordan
Right.
is doing a great job, and the royal family in Jordan is amazing, and I have many friends from the royal family. But some people don't understand that. But who also has the power is not the ruler, but the person that put the paper in front of the ruler so the ruler can sign it.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes the ruler has the best of the intentions, but a couple of people try to prevent that because they don't want you to shine. And I found the same problem with the Catholic Church too, unfortunately. And I'm Catholic, but a lot of things that I try to implement, and again, I just needed the stamp of the Catholic Church. I didn't ask for anything. And a lot of people, mostly laymen, uh, seem to have the interest of the need to keep existing so they are relevant. And that's very sad. That's very sad because there's a lot of people that have the best of intentions. That have a lot of holy men in the Catholic Church. Like I give you Pope Francis, absolutely, but Cardinal Koch, which is a Swiss cardinal, um, is a dear friend and a great holy man. But you also have people that are not interested. Obviously, I'm
Hmm.
not citing names, but
No.
people that just want to keep their positions and they just want to the problems to still exist so they are relevant because they are the ones giving aspirin to the terminal
Yeah.
patient.
And
And
sometimes you,
I
oh, go ahead.
no, no, sorry.
I was just going to say, and sometimes you just have to walk very carefully with what you do because of that.
Oh yeah, I made a lot of people look bad because in my ignorance, my naivete, I thought that okay, I have solutions for many problems, so let's solve the problems, right?
Yeah.
Why should we keep suffering if we can actually solve the problems? But apparently no, they want to keep with the problems. So
But you do a lot of work with persecuted Christian communities in the Middle East,
yes.
and especially, persecuted people. What's one moment or one person that really stands out to you from all of that work?
Well, I think that I have two moments actually. One was in 2014 that I had this Egyptian boy. I went to a school here in Los Angeles to talk about bully because, as I said, I was bullied when I was a kid. And then this 10-year-old boy asked to take a picture with me. He was Egyptian Copt. I have a very good relationship with the Copt Orthodox Church in I met with the Coptic Pope in Cairo. So he said, "I want to take a picture with you because you are my prince, because I'm also a Middle Eastern Christian," and that touched my heart.
Hmm.
I had to hold very, very tight not to cry in front of him. And I said, "Well, if I can inspire one person, I'm happy." And the other person was in Jordan in 2016 because at the height of the Islamic State, this 40 families of Iraq, they escaped to Jordan, and they were being in the Melkite church in Jordan, took them in. And then they called me and said, "We have this family. They have no food. They have nothing. They just arrived from Iraq." Said, "Okay." So I got my people there. We got food for this 40 families. And then I went there and I met this old lady. And and I immediately connect with her and I said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Imagine this old lady having to escape from Iraq all the way here, because they were just killing the Christians. It's
Hmm.
ridiculous." And then she said, "Yes, I'm fine. I'm being take good care and everything, but the problem is that I have to go because I have a high blood pressure problem. I have to go every day to the hospital, and then I have to stay there for, I don't remember, she said 1 hour waiting just to take her blood pressure twice a day." And then I said, "Oh my God." I looked to my assistant. I said, "For the love of God, go to the nearest pharmacy and get her a blood pressure
Hmm.
machine." So he went there, and sometimes it's not a money, for I don't know, 30, $50. I solved the problem, and then I gave it to her and said, "Oh, okay, so from now on, this is for you to take your blood pressure, but you also, if anyone needs, you're going to be the guardian of this." So she was so happy, and again, it's not just about the food, it's not but about uh people must know that you care. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, but it's not about you. It's
Oh
it's
no.
about it's about them and the very fact that you do care, and you're not doing it to try to gain a lot of notoriety, is what I'm hearing you say, but rather you're doing it because it's the right thing to do.
No, I have to correct you on this. I'm doing it because the feeling that you get, it's
Yeah,
it's worth more than any money, any fame, or anything. The feeling
that
that I got from it,
right.
knowing that I'm making that life a little better,
Yep.
is better than anything I've ever tried in
And
this
that's what
life.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's not about you're trying to become a big guy.
No.
You're doing it because it's the right thing to do, and you want to help people.
Yeah, but I get a lot from it too. I get a
Well,
lot.
you sure you do,
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
you do, but
To me, is like the feeling is amazing. Is
sure,
amazing.
yeah. Oh, I I totally appreciate it because it's the way I feel. If I can inspire people, if I've been able to help one person, then I think I've done good. And I
Absolutely.
appreciate exactly what you're saying. Well, you work with a lot of different people. You work with presidents, millionaires. You work with scientists, priests, martial artists, and so on. What have you learned about the universal desire under all of that? What do they all have in common?
Well, um, there is this beautiful poem that Elvis used to state when he used to sing that song "Walk a Mile in My Shoes,"
Hmm.
and he used to say, "You never stood in that man's shoes or saw things through his eyes. Shouldn't watch with helpless hands while a heart inside he dies. So help your brother along the way, no matter where it starts, because the same God that made you made him too, this man with broken hearts." So to me, I think it doesn't matter. Um, there's another part of the poem that I don't remember. Like they may be kings, they might be beggars. We are all figuring things out. That to me is the most important thing.
Hmm.
We have some might know a little better, some less better, but we are all figuring things out. We are not special. We are special. We have a special thing about every single person. We have every single uh person has something good and something special and some unique thing. But we are not better than anybody in terms of dignity and value. We are all the same and we are all figuring things out. So when you see someone you you don't know the battle that person is going through. You don't know the suffering that person is going through. And that's why I say compassion is so important. We have to try to put ourselves in someone's place, and critical thinking and compassion are the two things that are missing in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, we because of this thing called social media, which has great benefits too. We got together because of it, um, but unfortunately, give rise to some cognitive biases that we already have in one side, and also uh, gets us that herd um, anonymity. When we are in a group or when we are anonymous, we seem to do things that we wouldn't do otherwise if we were present and alone. There's a lot of psychological um studies about it. So we are living in times that we have this destructive zero sum division. And as I always say, is perfectly and healthy, perfectly fine and healthy to disagree, to have different opinions, as long as we are constructive about it. Let's say in politics, so, left and right and center, it's all fine if we think the way we want to think, as long as first that idea comes from ourselves and not from some celebrity or politician that we like or dislike. But from our own critical thinking. And second, we have to realize that we are all in the same boat. A country, a state, a city is a community is a boat. So is not because you don't like the captain that you're going to cheer for that boat to sink, because you're going to die too. So we have to realize these things. We have to realize that we have to end this thing, us against them, in everything, in politics, in religion, in everything, because that's not going to get us anywhere. That's this destroying the critical thinking and destroying the compassion, and therefore everything become a zero sum. Like in order for me to succeed, you have to be destroyed, and that only leads to destruction. And unfortunately, social media is a catalyst to that.
How do we do that? How do we regain or get more compassion? How do we get people to think more critically and
Well,
don't try
yeah,
to just do everything for themselves?
yeah. One thing that people don't realize is that our brain was hardwired to survive, not to be happy. So we evolved a lot technologically, but our brain is still from the caveman times. And not just the brain, like everything else. Why we gain weight? Because our body thinks we're still back in those times that we have food once a week, and then if we don't have food for many days, we have to storage the energy, otherwise we're going to die. So the same with something called tribalism. So we are trained, our mind is trained to see everything that is different as as the enemy. So we have this natural neurological tendency of that. And then we have, of course, all the cognitive biases, and the greatest one is, as I always say, stupidity, which is not ignorance. We're all ignorant about something. It's impossible to know everything about everything. Stupidity is our resistance, emotional resistance to expertise and knowledge and education. So that's one of the main things, is laziness of thinking. So why would you lose time considering who God is, who's your relationship with the divine, if you can go once a week to a church? I don't see anything wrong in going to the church, please. But what I'm saying is, some people go to the church because there they can get like a synthesized
Mm-hmm.
summary, and it's easy if they just take that and believe in that. Then they keep thinking the whole week about who God is, what's right and what's wrong, about religion and about ethics and moral and things like that. And the same with politics. Why should I try to understand politics, to try to understand what is a common good, if I can just look one politician that I like and just go for everything he says? And that's the problem. That's why. And the social media, again, is a catalyst of that, because you can be you can insult, you can criticize, we have another thing called the Dunning-Kruger syndrome, which is we think that the things that we know the least are um, we have more security in the things that we know the least than the things that we actually know.
Right.
Yeah. So you put it all together. We have confirmation biases because this algorithm in all social medias, they only bring you things that you to confirm what you already think. They realize what are your preferences, and then they just bring you the confirmation bias, so you only hear one side of the story.
How do we change that mindset?
Oh, we have to break the cycle. We have to develop compassion first. We have to realize that that person might not look like you, might not like the same things as you, might not believe in the same things as you, but is someone that you have to live with that person. You don't have to agree, but you have to live in the best possible way.
But again,
So,
the issue is that there is a lot of that on it. I hear what you're saying, but how do we break that cycle? How do we change the mindset so that more people will start to
Well,
learned that just because we're all different, it doesn't mean that we're all less capable or less than ourselves.
yeah, well, first we have to identify the stupidity. Where is the stupidity? Are we is a very hard process, but
Hmm.
we have to see if our opinion is actually uh our own first and foremost. Think yourself is your opinion is I have an exercise for that, which is a contemplation. So you try to meditate, imagining a conflict that you have, and then you remember your own position in this conflict. Then you go and you try to put yourself in the shoes of the person against you. Why that person has those concepts, those ideas, those opinions, and then you try to go out and see both of you, and try to see without any dogs on the fight. You try to see the
Yeah,
same conflict. You see it from at least three different perspectives to
we've we've
understand it.
we've got to start teaching those concepts to people because all too many people have children. They don't bring them up any differently. They don't look at a broader perspective and horizon, and I hear that's what
Exactly.
you're suggesting. But we've got to
Yeah, we
find ways to teach that.
the
Um,
best way is education. That's why I
yeah.
created Logos One, which is a new educational system
Well,
that,
tell us about that.
yeah, well, because I was gifted, a lot of gifted people have problems in school because
Hmm.
when you have like a very deep giftedness, you cannot um, conform with the system, with the mainstream system. So I can only thrive if I create my own systems. So that's why I developed a whole new system of philosophy, original. I completed Aristotle, Plato's work. I refuted Machiavelli's Prince. I completed some of Kant's works too, because I have to create my own frameworks. And then I said, well, 95% of what you learn in school is useless. You're never going to use it. You're never going to remember it. So why do we waste the most valuable asset we have, which is time? Not even Elon Musk can buy time, because time is nothing you can do to get more. So why do we basically throw away time in school, in a time
Hmm.
that we have our uh, beautiful youth? And so why do we do that? And then I realized that, well, the actual things that you really have to know, you can learn in 2 years, which is basic math, basic history, language, all these things. In 2 years, you can learn that. So I created a system that is based on your vocation and your level. So since a child goes to kindergarten, the child starts being tested by vocation and the level and everything. So this child is taken uh, there's one of 15 traits that can be combined to 30.5 billion different profiles. So today, you go to school, you have only one profile. You have to follow that profile, right? So
Right.
with my system, you can combine it and have 30.5 billion different profiles. So if you have more tendency to be an artist, you're going to be an artist. If you have a vocation and desire to be an engineer, you're going to put all your energy, all your time to do what you like to do, what you're born to do. I like to say that Logos One was created for the child that cannot stand still because they're supposed to dance. So uh, if you don't conform, if you don't sit still, if you don't do whatever the teacher tells you to do, you are a bad student. And that doesn't mean you're a bad student because you're supposed to be the world's greatest dancer or the world's greatest painter. So or the world's greatest engineer if you are not good in sports. So the system we have now was created uh, for the Industrial Revolution. So the world needed factory workers, people that conform. And with AI, all bets are off. So my system integrates with AI and is self-regulated and self um, improved by AI. So there's a book out as also it's called Logos One, and that's the future of education. You're not going to be able to, because we're going to have a huge change in professions. So probably the child that is in a first grade today, the profession of that child doesn't even exist yet. So I'm sure, because a lot of the depression and mental problems we have today and suffering that we have today in our society is because we have to work to make ends meet. We have to work to put food on the table. And that makes us work in things that are not very nice and are things that we are not happy to work. And working is probably you spend most of your life working, so you're going to be miserable if you are doing something you don't like or you're not born to do. So that's why we have all this problems in the world. So with
Ha-
my system, uh, people will be happy because they'll be doing what they're meant to do, what they love to do, and they have, as I always say, we're going to have one Einstein in each corner because we give the tools of that person to be what that person was born to be.
mhm. Has Logos One been implemented anywhere yet?
No, no. We
Okay.
just formulated this year. I had this idea for 15, almost 20 years ago, and I finally put everything together. So now we are going out to get it to be implemented.
You've written 37 books. Is there any kind of a common theme or thread that goes through all the books?
Yeah, actually, they are all part of the same ecosystem, let's say. So because I see everything is interrelated. Um, for example, I formulated an universal law that's called the triple accord, which everything in the world is the result of a resonance between reason, empathy, and compassion, so critical thinking, compassion, and balance, measured by balance. So, a government, a civilization, a relationship, a friendship, everything is measured by these three elements. Um, so with that, I developed what's called neo-holism, which is a model of governance. A brand new, completely new system of political system, which I always say is not left, center, right, is forward. And a new way of seeing politics, a new way of seeing transcending ideology. So the same thing with the skeptical mysticism, which is a brand new epistemology, brand new metaphysics, which finally got science and reason. I'm sorry, reason and faith together. I created a new. It's called Jus Vera, which is a new legal system and a new penal system. I created, as I said, the Royal Gambit. I created Logos One and Magnus Delta, which is the higher education continuation of Logos One. Um, I mean, everything I created, I wrote about is either related to history, sovereignty, politics, philosophy, which to me is everything together. And I also brought the Eastern and Western philosophy together because I studied a lot of Buddhism, Aikido, Japanese Shinto, Zen Buddhism. So I brought that with the Western philosophy. And so my system is a balance between both because I found out that everything has to be in balance. Otherwise, the system destroys itself.
Hmm. If you could transmit one sentence or say one thing to humanity that would be remembered in 200 years, what would it be?
Well, I always I always think that um, we I think it's James Sherman that said that, and I always like to repeat it. It's we cannot go back and make a new start, but every moment we have the chance to make a new ending. It doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter how you think your life is not good, but you can always make a new ending. You can always change, even if it's so hard. You can always make it better. It's up to you.
Yeah. And it really is. It is up to each of us. And if we want to make the world a better place, we can do it. But it's up to us to do it, isn't it?
Absolutely. And remember that the person, so not just a person, but all the animals, all the plants, all the environment, we are all part of the same. The science already proven that. We're
Yeah.
all part, we share the same frequency. So, you know, treat everyone with kindness. There's another saying that says that kindness doesn't cost anything and buys you everything. So be kind to an animal, to a plant, be kind to a person, be kind, be kind, be kind, be kind. It's never too much.
And be kind to yourself too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
the first person. You have to love yourself before learning to love other people. And again, back to what I said in the beginning, we're all figuring things out. Don't feel bad because you are figuring things out because we all are in different levels, but we all are.
Yeah. Well, this has absolutely been, I think, very thought provoking, and I think it's been wonderful. Last question for you: how do you define unstoppable? What do you think unstoppable means?
Well, in my opinion, unstoppable is that that thing that makes you uh that drive inside of you that despite of everything, um everything can go against you, but you still manage to, like Nelson Mandela said, something is impossible until it's done. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I think is unstoppable. Like you keep moving because the universe is in constant movement. There's a breath that the Japanese would call kokyuryu, so you're always breathing. So you have to keep moving. You have to keep moving. Nothing stays static is good.
One of the things that immediately comes to mind is that there was a guy named Roger Bannister. He is the person who broke the 4 minute mile. And people said for years before he did it, no one can physically run faster than a mile in 4 minutes. And if you do, you'll die. And that worked until I think it was 1957 when he did it. And
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many
The same
examples
with
of
the
that.
car. The same
Those
with the
things.
car. Remember,
Yeah. Yep.
people thought that if the car went more than 35 miles an hour or something like that, it will explode. Yeah.
Yep. Well, I want to thank you again for being here. I think you've given us lots to think about. If people want to reach out to you and learn more about what you do and so on, how do they do that?
They can visit my website. It's princegarios.org.
Can you spell that?
Prince, yeah,
Yeah.
Prince, like you say it, and Gharios
.org.
altogether .org. Princegarios.org.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
and yeah, or Google me. Uh, I have social media. I have Instagram. I have Facebook. I'll be happy to.
LinkedIn, I know.
LinkedIn, yes. How we got together.
Yeah, it is how we got
Yeah,
together.
yeah. So
Well,
YouTube again. You
hmm,
Google. You go to YouTube. It's our channel is called Royal Herald. You can watch the documentary about what we do. It's called the Royal Legacy and the Christian Kings of the Middle East. So both have history. You can watch the Royal Legacy and you get both the history and what we are doing now. So it's free. You don't have to do anything. You just go on YouTube. It's everything we do is free.
great. Well, thank you for being here. And I want to thank all of you for watching and listening today, wherever you are. please give us a 5-star rating and give us a great review. I think that Gharios has given us a lot to think about today, and I hope that you all agree with that. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Feel free to email me at michaelhi@accessibi.com. That's michaelhi at accessibi.com. And Gharios, for you and all of you listening, if you know anyone else who you think ought to be a guest on Unstoppable Mindset, please introduce us. We'd love to hear from you and from them. And we're always looking for more people to have come on so that we can show that we're all more unstoppable than we think we are. But again, Prince Gharios, I want to thank you for being here. This has been absolutely wonderful.
Thank you, my brothers. It was my pleasure, and I'm always here, whatever you need.
If you're ready to go deeper into the ideas that shape how we see ourselves and others, I have a free gift for you. Head over to michaelhingson.com and download my free ebook, Blinded by Fear. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep choosing to live with an unstoppable mindset.